And we're going to do the countdown. Brad, can you hear me okay, Brad?
Gotcha.
Okay, very good. I may need to take, I guess, the headset out. So, I will have to take my headset out because we've got...
All right. Welcome to Wellness Wellbeing Wednesday. Happy Wellness Wednesday, everyone. I am super excited to be here. And we are live streaming on YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, and we have Clubhouse on. And so I am just honored to be here. I'm going to say hello, everyone. Thank you for being here. We have an amazing speaker today. And before we get started, I'm just excited to say thank you. Thank you for being here. My name is Michelle Maynard MacArthur, and while we are streaming on Clubhouse as well, in the Elephant Strategy Club, I am your hospitality, health, and wellness strategist that is here to help guide you through that positive process for change. And that is with a lean, holistic, healing approach from the inside out. That lean stands for lifestyle, exercise, attitude, and nutrition. The fun part is taking and showing you to those top luxury wellness destinations all over the world. And when you talk about the purpose, passion, and why, I just want to take a few moments, as I always do, because there are people hurting. And we're going to dive deep, really deep today. And so I just want to take a few moments of stillness, because from all the tragedies that we've had just in our world today, from, we can say, Uvalde, the shootings that we had from Syria, Turkey, Lebanon, we've had just so many storms that have come. I want to take a few moments because you may have a storm that's going on in your own country. It may be in your own state, province, in your own home, or it may just be within yourself. Whatever that is, what I like to do is I like to just take a few moments and just of stillness as we just ask God for that hedge of protection over us, just covering over us. So thank you for that moment of stillness. Thank you so much for that. Well, as I mentioned, my name is Michelle Maynard MacArthur, and I am a master certified health and wellness coach that does specialize in that overall optimal health and wellness worldwide, with those innovations to reflect, recharge, and renew yourself one step at a time. These tips are being brought to you by MacArthur Accommodations, where we are that hospitality, health, and wellness coaching and consulting advisement company. And we reach out to you executives, to you entrepreneurs, to you retirees, to help you find that perfect balance between mind, body, and soul, between what is most important, that is your self-care, then family, then work and play. And I always like to say it that it's in that order. So today we have joining me is a wonderful speaker that as we are doing the tips, and the series that we have this month is the Revitalizing Yourself with the Lasting Lifestyle Changes and a Wellness Mindset. Today, the wellness tips are still going to be on wellness lifestyle benefits and changes, but our speaker is Brad Walcher. And Brad, if you saw that I put into the notes coming in, is the executive director at Treasured Vessels Foundation. This is an anti-trafficking agency that exists to co-create safe communities that restore survivors of sexual exploitation to achieve their true potential. He envisions a community more safe for children, more healing for survivors, and more dangerous for traffickers. And for 20 years, he has worked in a variety of leadership roles in technology, experiential marketing, hospitality, contributing to over $185 million of revenue. But before joining TVF, he was the director of development communications at a North Texas anti-trafficking agency, where the organization tripled in size during his tenure. Brad is married to his beautiful wife, Ashley, for 13 years. They have 3 adorable little towheads, Roman, who's 8, Smith, who is 6, and Stonley, who is 1. Brad travels with his family as much as they can and studies wine with the Wine and Spirit Education Trust. But in addition to his role at TVF, he is a founding steering committee member for the statewide anti-demand coalition, and he serves actually on the executive board for the North Texas Coalition Against Human Trafficking. He earned his bachelor's degree from Azusa Pacific University in California with a master's degree in strategic management from Schema Business School in Sophia and Antipolis, France. Now you can find them all on the social media platforms, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube. They've got some major wonderful things. And you can go to their website at treasuredvessels.org, which I am going to go through and post this in a minute. But today he's going to be speaking on complex mental health needs of trafficking survivors and where do they go once they are recovered. So my question is going to be to each of you out there, if you want to drop this in the chat, is not only where are you coming from in the world, but what do you know about human trafficking, their survivors, and their complex mental health needs? So without further ado, I want to welcome Brad. I do want to do the disclaimer, as we always do, that this is all for educational purposes only. We are not here to treat, diagnose, or prescribe. So if you are in need of immediate danger, please seek professional medical help, because that's something we want to do. But today we are celebrating not just National Mental Wellness Month, but the Human Trafficking Prevention Month. And there's so many other ones, but I want to give the floor now to Brad and just say thank you for saying yes, Brad. Thank you for being here.
Well, hi, Michelle. Yeah, thank you for having me. Good to be able to do these things on National Human Trafficking Prevention Month.
Yes, indeed. Indeed. Well, thank you so much. I'm just going to turn the floor over to you and just talk to us a little bit about Treasured Vessels and where that plays in with mental health.
Sure. Yeah. So there's when a survivor gets recovered from trafficking, it's a big mystery. And that's kind of our why. That's where we started. You see these things pop up in the news like trafficker apprehended or victims recovered from trafficking situation. You maybe have heard of the girl at the Mavs game who was taken from a bathroom there. We hear these stories, but we never hear what happens next. And so that's kind of our genesis story, is we wanted to figure that out. So we looked into it, and when we founded back in 2016, it was a really ugly situation. And I mean, there was really nothing happening. There was nobody was going anywhere. There was really no resources for survivors of trafficking. But today, I'm, I guess, pleased to announce that there are some resources. We have a safe house for victims of trafficking. There are a number of organizations who go out into the field and do operations with law enforcement to help identify more victims. Healthcare has jumped on board. The hospitality industry has jumped on board, and they're training their people better. They're looking for signs of trafficking and actually recovering survivors. And I guess most recent statistics we have is from some research that Treasured Vessels did ourselves. 2022 in North Texas, which is where we're based, there were 700 identified survivors, named individuals. Just a few years before that, the estimate was that there are 400 teens out on the street of Dallas every night. And so just a few years later, that number's almost doubled. And it's not an estimate, it's actually a number that's unduplicated. And so what happens to all these 700? We've got a waiting list at our safe house of 32 people just from the last year. and because we're out of space, we're fully committed to the people who are in our program now, and the program, it takes time to recover from trafficking, and yeah, we just need more resources, want more people to know what's actually happening out there, and so it's great to have an opportunity like this to share a little bit about it.
Well, that's great. And what really jumped out at me, Brad, was when I heard you speak at another event and go into just the traumas and what's really underlining and what makes you unique. I'd really love to have you dive in. Of course, I'm going to have some questions for you a little bit after, but some of those things that on your presentation, it really spoke. It spoke to what I see as in a world, especially now from the pandemic, where there's so many different people that are, sorry about that are hurting, and they have that mental health
Yeah.
of the need. And so speak to us a little bit about what that uniqueness is, and where the training of not all of the organizations that are similar to you offer these same type of services, and what is out there, because someone may be listening to the replay and say something's not right with me. Maybe there's some of the traumas and things that are going on. Wait, I didn't think about that. I didn't know that. And maybe this is an opportunity to be a healing, place for them to seek out additional help, or something that they may see from a family or friend, or even to be cognizant of when they're shopping in the grocery store or something. So speak to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, that's a good question. So you got to imagine a little bit what happens in sex trafficking. You've got usually a girl. There are definitely boys who get caught up in this, but they sell their bodies every night. We hear anywhere from like 10 to 15 customers a night, or dates per night. And they do this every night. Typically it's sundown to sun up are their hours. And they have quotas, and then they give all the money that they make that night to their trafficker, to their pimp. And this is usually someone that they're either in love with, like a romantic situation, and that's how they got trapped initially, was that through a romantic partner who kind of turned on them and became their trafficker, or oddly enough, their a family member that's increasing in commonality. And so talking about wellness, talking about mental health needs, you imagine going through this trauma every day. And what we know from pornography, unfortunately, is that this lifestyle is very violent. The demands of Johns or the dates or the sex buyers are increasingly weird, strange, asking for new things, whether it's fetishes or violent acts. Strangulation is common. And so when survivors go through all this stuff, there's really no mental health, wellness. It's not possible going through this. And so when survivors come to us after they've been recovered from this, or identified in maybe a hospital or something, they've got all sorts of hurdles to get over. They've got gaps in their employment, or education. They've got a criminal record typically. They've got trust issues, especially with men. We do a number of assessments on depression, anxiety, self-esteem, and then PTSD, which includes dissociation. Dissociation is kind of a big word for when your brain separates itself from the body, metaphorically, of course. Brain separates itself from the body so that the body can endure something really terrible, but the brain doesn't go mad while it's happening. And when that happens on repeat, it's harder for the brain to reconnect. And so you have survivors coming into our program with very debilitating mental health needs. And to your point, that's kind of a missing piece in what we see kind of across the board in anti-trafficking measures. it's very hard for a survivor to find the resources necessary to overcome these really challenging mental health needs.
Definitely great points on that. And you guys are located, and y'all are growing too. And I want to kind of just be cognizant of time. I want to ask just a couple of questions. If there we go. All right. Okay, there we go. So what I would like to do is just to find out when you're talking about some of these things that are so deep and people that are hurting, it just gives me a moment to say that this is a lot. This is, and it's real. And people don't really want to talk about this. This is something that's kind of very uncomfortable. And I've heard that sex trafficking is really big here in the DFW, which it is worldwide. And we hear, I'd like for you to answer just how big is it really here in the Texas, but also I'd love for you to say that when people think of human trafficking, they just think of that part, but also you just elaborate a little bit more about trafficking, how trafficking can be so many different things.
Sure. Yeah. Unfortunately, DFW is one of the hotter markets for trafficking. We used to, a partner organization would measure how many ads were posted online for human beings to buy or rent a human being for a period of time. And it was in the hundreds of thousands of ads each year that were posted for sex in DFW. And they used to estimate that it was a $99 million industry just in Dallas. And this is a long time ago, so we know that it's much greater now. And we also know that it's grossly underreported. So, this is organized crime. So there's no annual report to look at to see like how many dollars are actually being exchanged. The law enforcement is doing a great job to wrap their arms around it. But what we found is that Texas as a state is the number 2 state in the nation, just second to California. And then we tend to be in a foot race between Houston and DFW as to who's got a bigger problem. In Houston, you see a lot more illicit massage businesses. There's over 200 of those in Houston that they can identify. And in Dallas, we've got, and it's interesting, you working in hospitality, we've got Harry Hines through Dallas. There's a street in Dallas, and then the street next to that is Shady Trail, which I'm not making that name up. That's actually the name of the street. And that's kind of like what we call the Blade or the Strip, the track. And we also see trafficking happening in higher end restaurants. So like McKinney Avenue up in Uptown, in Frisco, some of the nicer areas, South Lake, where there's nice restaurants, you'll see what looks like escorts on the surface. You might think, oh, they're just making money for themselves. If you talk to any of them, they'll all tell you that they don't know a single escort, prostitute, whatever, who's just doing this on their own for their own money. They all have a pimp in the background who's collecting money, making threats or lying to them or something like that to coerce them into this. So it is a pretty large problem in DFW.
Yeah.
And we've got a number of organizations though fighting back. There's actually about 50 in DFW doing different things, different parts of the solution, and we're making a huge impact. And I'll quote one of the survivor leaders who I kind of follow online. She said that we might be the number 2 state in human trafficking, but we're the #1 state in anti-human trafficking.
Love it.
Which I like to put my fist up for that.
That's definitely. How are there so many girls that you would say that are really getting wrapped up in something as awful as this, and why don't they just leave when it gets hard? What would you say is probably that biggest thing?
A lot of people ask that, and it's hard to make sense of it. If you think you're selling your body and you're getting beat up, and why just stop? Why run? Why not just run away? And it's a complex answer to a complex problem, of course. But I heard somebody give this analogy. Imagine, like, I'm 42. Imagine I come to your house and I say, hey, I met your 13-year-old daughter, and I'm going to go up to her room and I'm going to shut the door and we're just going to have some alone time together. Any reasonable person would be like, no, get out of my house. No way. But in reality, that's what's happening right under our noses as parents. And mine are, just getting to the age, at 8, 6, and 1, where we're talking about this stuff with them. But we're with a device, with a smartphone, your child can shut their door, go into their room,
Yep.
and talk to a stranger through their device, and stranger could talk about whatever they want to talk about. And, maybe they set up an account that says they're a 15-year-old talking to your 13-year-old daughter, but we have no idea what age they are, what gender they are, and they can talk about whatever they want to talk about. And so this is the entry point that we're seeing as very, very common, especially since COVID, because more kids are online, more access to devices, and they're looking for vulnerabilities that these youth have. So maybe they post something online about their parents getting divorced. Maybe they post something online about how much they can't stand their family because their family's crazy or whatever. Something as small as that is something that a trafficker can exploit.
Right.
And so when they go online and start talking to them, they say, hey, man, I can't believe you're going through what you're going through. I would never put you through that. I think you're beautiful. I can't believe your parents are treating you the way they do. Like, I think you're really cool. I think you could be a model. I've got an entertainment company. I could get you a job. So they start with a little bit of rapport building, and they can. Let me ask you, Michelle, how much do you think a trafficking victim is worth to a trafficker annually? How much money do you think they can make?
A lot. A lot. Thousands.
They did a study in Houston. Yeah. They did a study in Houston. It was $180,000 a year from one victim. And so if they have to build a relationship, build a rapport online for a couple months, 3 months, 4 months, to build enough trust to where they get to the point where they can say, hey, let's meet up, it's worth it for them, because just from one victim, there's a lot of outcome. And so so your second question was, why don't they just get out? Why don't they just run away? Why don't they leave? Why don't they, go to some place where they can be safe? And it's because after all of this time, they've built up trust. They've fallen in love, usually with this perpetrator, fallen in love with the account online, not necessarily the person, because they haven't met in person. And so there's this deep trust built. There's promises that are laid out, like, I think you're beautiful, I'll get you a job. I want to take you on a date. Let's get married. Let's move away together. I've got a car, like, we can go on a trip together. So there's all these promises, carrots dangling. And so young people who are going through trouble, have trouble at home, maybe it's sexual abuse at home, maybe it's parental neglect, maybe it's poverty. They see these carrots and they go after them.
Right.
Naturally, and so once they're into a really bad situation where they're turning 15 tricks a night and they're getting beat up, they're like, well, no, I got to keep doing this for my boyfriend, my pimp. because he's the only one who's stayed by me. He's the only one who's, made these promises to me. He's the only one who believes in me.
Right.
So it's actually really hard to get out because it's not physical chains, it's mental warfare, mental manipulation.
Yeah, which is hard. I want to ask too, because the work that you're doing in the survivor recovery and the housing them, offering them therapy, is it working? And are they ready to live independently after the programs and the restoration?
Yeah, that's such a good question. That's really the crux of it, like all this effort, all the money we spend, all the funds we raise, all the people we hire, and all the work, like, is it really effective? And so there's a number of ways that we measure that. One is kind of the things I mentioned, mental health, regarding mental health, depression, anxiety, self-esteem, and then PTSD, which kind of goes hand in hand with dissociation. We measure all these things over time. Every 3 months, we do another assessment. And you see crazy statistics, 60, 70, 80% improvement on these assessments. Not assessments that we came up with, but proper mental health assessments that counselors use in mental health best practice. And so we'll share those results back with the survivors themselves as a part of their psychoeducation to say, look at the progress you're making. Like it really is working. Another thing I'll mention is EMDR, or eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. Really common practice for trauma therapy. And we've found that it is really effective. When you dissociate a lot, as I was mentioning, your brain kind of separating from the body, over time, the more extreme cases can develop what we used to call multiple personality disorder. Today we call it dissociative identity disorder, or DID. And that happens when the brain is fragmented into different personalities or different identities. And EMDR, as far as we know, is the most effective at integrating the whole person back together. And that is probably the highest gain of any work that we've seen thus far. And what we see is that these we serve all women, and they just in a very short time make huge leaps in who they are, who they present as, the way they carry themselves, the way they look, like we don't ever share pictures of them, but we'll have pictures of them either from when they were in the life or when they come into the house early on. And we get to show them, look what you used to look like and what you look like today. And it'll be like unrecognizable and with no physical changes. And then, we help them get jobs. And we've got a program that we're just starting now where they actually can do work in the home so that they make money and have something to put on their resume while they're in the house. And so they leave the program with money in the bank. We'll get them a cell phone again. We'll get all their legal documents in order. We suggest very strongly that they go through some sort of education while they're in the house with us. And typically all of them do. And so they're getting either GEDs. We've partnered with Louisville ISD, and they can actually get an online high school diploma instead of a GED in some cases. They're getting college graduate degrees. We've got 2 right now. They're actually doing master's degrees as part of the program.
Wow.
And so the stories we get to hear from their life change is just so amazing. Well, and one of them I'll just share real quickly is first, one of the survivors got her first job. She moved through the phases of our program, and she got into the phase where we kind of help her get a job. And she gets her first paycheck, and she said, wow, with tears in her eyes, this is the first time that I've earned money and I don't have to give it to my trafficker. And it was powerful for us to hear that, because you just think about, someone who's young, especially, like, they haven't had the experiences that we have, like going to high school, going to college, maybe masters, and like working jobs and figuring stuff out. Like their experience was so much different. And to have her go through that and experience that kind of like under our watch was just a really sweet moment for all of us.
Not just powerful, but just overcoming of what and where that they've come from to where they are, and to be that testimony.
Yeah.
Also, well, I know our time's going to be coming to a close here in just a moment, and I do want to know what you want everyone to know. But before I get to that last question, can you share any like 3 main coping skills that might be helpful for anybody out there? Any just coping skills that may not even understand it, because there are so many that are struggling with different types of the mental health issues, disassociation, multiple personalities, bipolar. There's so many different ones. Any like just 3 coping skills that you might share?
Sure. Yeah. First one we always go to is box breathing. So if you draw a box, now this is a real common one, but 4 seconds inhale, 4 seconds hold, 4 seconds exhale, 4 seconds hold. And what that does is it slows down your heart rate, helps you focus on something other than whatever you're focused on, and potentially adding cortisol to your system. And it does a number of other things. And I'm not a clinician or a practitioner myself. I come from a business background, but they will tell you that it's really effective. Second one I would say is the 5 senses, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. You, and I might botch this, but you identify 5 things you can see, 4 things you can feel, 3 things you can maybe smell, 2 things you can taste, 1 thing you can, whichever one I missed. And so you go through the 5 senses and you try to identify things around you. And it's grounding naturally, because you kind of like put yourself back in your place and you're not like in your head as much. And then the third, I would say gratitude is something that we work on oftentimes, and it's not necessarily it's not like an acute skill necessarily. It's more of a chronic skill, I guess. It's not the clinical term, but it's a skill that you develop over time and get better at over time. And we can tie all sorts of things to gratitude, from better sleep to better relationships to better job performance, just from gratitude. So those are the 3 just pop off my head.
I love it. I'm putting this into the chat for anybody that was like, what did he say? Let me hit rewind, which you can definitely continue to hit rewind. We want you to just replay this over and over and share it with your friends. And the website is here for treasuredvessels.org. But the last thing before we close, Brad, is what do you want everyone to know?
That's a great question. I think if you understand trafficking from media, we haven't done a great job in media defining the problem. And that's problematic, because unfortunately there are survivors out there right now in DFW. Like, I live in Dallas, so in my city, there are victims that'll be out on the street tonight in the freezing cold. They'll be posted online as we speak right now. And if they go watch Sound of Freedom, the movie, really cool movie that explores international human trafficking, they're going to conclude, oh, well, that's not me. If they look at I mentioned the girl at the Mavs game, who actually had a mental disability, and she had done this before. She had walked off with someone she didn't know before. So if they look at that, they say, well, that's not me. And unfortunately, there's just not enough voices out there talking about what human trafficking really looks like. And that's what I mentioned, like online recruitment, or potentially familial, where like maybe it's a poverty situation where mom is trafficking their daughter just to make ends meet, or maybe it's for drug money or something else. Those stories are very slow and not exciting enough, I think, for Hollywood. And actually, one of the survivors just met with a huge studio, and they had plans to run her whole story, and they canceled it because it wasn't a good enough story. And I think I hope that people take away today, maybe, and this month, Human Trafficking Prevention Month, what sex trafficking really looks like right here in DFW, because it looks the way I'm describing, and those are the survivors in our safe home right now. Like those are their stories, and the people who are out there tonight who are going to turn tricks and give their money to someone else, that's their story. And those are the people who are going to run into the grocery store. Those are the people who lives next door to us in a nice neighborhood. They're the ones who are maybe walking down the hotel hallway at the same time with somebody that looks suspicious or something. And I'll give you one like action item. The National Human Trafficking Hotline is somewhere you can call. It's a very easy number. I've got it memorized: 888-3737-888. 888-3737-888. Very easy. And you're not going to get anybody in trouble. It's just like a tip line. It's just a hotline. And what they do is they capture these tips over time. And once they have a few that they can put together to make a case, then they'll dispatch police. And so they're constantly listening, constantly capturing, and relaying this information to law enforcement.
What's
so
that?
It's a real 888-3737-888.
888.
Real
Okay.
easy way.
I got
Not
it.
getting anybody in trouble. Just and they might tell you, oh, we don't think that's a legitimate tip. No big deal. At least you saw something and you did something. You see something, say something.
Love it. Well, Brad, I am so grateful for you and for just the work that you guys are doing there in Treasured Vessels to really make that difference, especially with something that people really don't feel comfortable with talking about, but it needs to. And that's how we're going to be able to bring more awareness. I definitely want to do this again, maybe go into the next time after we've gotten people a little bit familiar with it, but you talked about familiar, maybe satanic rituals and these different things that people go through. And I'd love to just do a part 2 sometime, to have you back. But I do want to say thank you. The best way, you said, what's your call to action? The best way is just to reach out to you guys on the website.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Check us out.
What about for any listeners that might be, I'm not in Texas. Can you provide them some resources for wherever they might be worldwide, or what suggestions do you have?
Yeah, well, we do serve survivors from everywhere.
Okay.
So we'll take, we have a hotline on our website, and we'll take survivors that they don't have to be from DFW. Most of them are. And I would say Polaris. If you go to polarisproject.org, they're probably the biggest organization that's rallying everyone across the US. And they've got the most research. They've kind of got their finger on the pulse of what's happening in human trafficking, both sex trafficking and labor trafficking.
Okay. All right. I'm just posting this also in the clubhouse for them. Well, I want to say thank you so much. We're going to cut.
Thank you.
We're going to end the live on YouTube. LinkedIn and Facebook, and then we'll close out over on Clubhouse. So hang tight, definitely don't leave. But for anyone that has any questions, if you're looking for resources, jot them right here. I have tagged Brad, Treasured Vessels, on the LinkedIn, YouTube. That way you can reach out. Or if you just need something, that just to know that while, as I did the disclaimer, we are not here to treat, diagnose, or prescribe, but if you need resources, this is for educational purposes only. We can put you in touch with the experts that are licensed to be able to provide that help. So I want to just again say thank you to everyone for coming. It's been a joy and honor. And I want to say bye-bye as I put there. Here we go. And we will be ending the stream here, and we'll come over to Clubhouse here in just a moment. All right. So we'll